Hello and welcome. I'm Gary Shipe. Thanks for listening in as we continue to talk with leaders in our community. Joining me today are some folks from Family Services, Ruthann Howell, Derek Taylor, and Melissa Ellis. Ruthann, Derek, and Melissa, welcome. Thanks for coming today.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Ruthann, you're the CEO president, right? So I'll ask you some big picture questions here.
Big CEO questions?
To
Thanks.
get our audience acquainted with
Sure.
Family Services. Some background information. Family Services has been helping people in King County like in a variety of ways for a long time, right? Since the 1890s, is that right?
Yes, we started in 1892, and our mission hasn't changed. It's really looking at helping families and individuals move from one experience to a point of really stability and really helping families get to root causes of issues that are getting in their way to having the kind of life they want to have.
What kind of impetus started it in the 1890s? What was Seattle like and King County like in the 1890s?
You know, it's very interesting because Family Services started in 1892 when there was a depression, and we've lived through 10 depressions, so the experience that we have right now in this economy is not unusual
You know, that's
to
actually
us.
kind of reassuring to hear that they've been around before, we've survived, and we'll survive them again.
You know, that's the way we like to think of it. We don't like it. I
No.
would much rather be having a better economy that's not affecting people's lives so negatively. But yes, the agency started in a downturn, particularly working with immigrant families and a lot of tent cities. So sometimes things don't change as much as you would think. And there was a desire to really help families move towards stability by, when you look at some of our early archive material, a family came in for food, one of the tent families, and we gave them a cow and chicken. So really looking at, you know,
don't
how do you...
still do that to you?
No,
The
but it's really
livestock
looking at
is-
how to really make a systemic response rather than just, we'll help you for today. We really want to help you for the future.
Well, so you have been covering a wide range of issues related to poverty and just...
Homelessness, domestic violence, mental health, and particularly we're focused right now on working with young children. And really, there's a recognition in our agency that the earlier you can start working with young children and their parents, you can make a difference in that family life and hopefully maybe avoid some of the issues that we're seeing down the road. So start earlier, deeper, longer. All of our work is therapeutic, which is a differentiating point about us in the community. So we really have a very skilled staff that can really work, like I said, deep and long with people. So we might be working with families for a couple of years because what we really want to do is move them permanently out of the cycles that they're experiencing of either homelessness or poverty or domestic violence.
And let's talk about the geographic scope of Family Services.
We serve all of King County.
It is the county.
Yes, and you know, having said that, we serve all of King County, but particularly when you're working with families who are experiencing the kind of crisis our families often are experiencing, they may be from all over the state. Seattle is seen as an area to come, that there might be more services, there might be more help available, but our catchment area, if you will, is King County.
People still come to this area looking for a job, and it doesn't always pay off, does it?
You know, I think that's been true in the past, and I think when people get more desperate and more scared, you go wherever you think you might get what you need to make sure your kids have what they need.
And let's describe some of those other services that you offer. I mean, besides we're talking generally breaking cycles of homelessness and poverty. Derek, you're a specialist with the housing, right? I mean, getting people into a house to live.
Yeah, and actually, so we have case management services, and then my job is a little different. It's housing specialist, and my role really is to investigate different housing opportunities that are in the community, tax credit buildings, subsidized housing, and make sure that the caseworkers have access to all of those different resources in the community.
Mm-hmm. And a family in trouble then has got to get in touch with a variety of things. Family Services can plug them into and help them find all those things they need. Or you talked about a therapeutic approach before, Ruthann. I mean, what does that all involve? I mean, there's not just one way out of a desperate plight of a family.
Well, so our approach is sort of two-pronged in a way. And so on the one hand, the caseworker has to have that sort of therapeutic approach, which is very important to explore the reasons for homelessness and hopefully facilitate or assist the family in reaching a place where they can overcome those root causes for their homelessness. That's the hope. The other side of it is that housing is very complex, and every person who requests housing is going to have a different background, and every housing provider is going to have a different set of criteria for their housing. And so what you have to try and do is match the individual or family with the housing that's most appropriate for them. And so really, you have to have one person, which in this case it's me, or at least we felt we needed one person to solely investigate housing, to make sure that we had access to all of the resources that were available to us in the community, so we could match people with the best housing for them.
And another part of I want to get before we get your nonprofit, tell people that are you part of a bigger bureaucracy county-wide? It's not a
No, our name probably throws you because it sounds like it's a public sector entity, but
Yeah.
we've been here for 116 years and we're a nonprofit, and we were here before most of the public sector entities were actually established. And interestingly enough, our agency actually has been often on the vanguard of a lot of societal changes. So a lot of institutional organizations that exist now in our community and our state actually came out of family services in our history.
And so, great. Now I want to sort of narrow the focus. We've talked a little broadly, I guess. And we touched on housing, Derek, and Melissa, you took family services an opportunity from them when you needed the same kind of things Derek's been talking about, and you went through and have come out on the other side of this. So we want to get to your experience as well. I don't know if we want to get to that just yet. Maybe, I don't know, Derek, do you want to talk about the need, I guess, for low-income housing, affordable housing? Those are phrases, that are tossed around a lot. What do they mean, and how come people can't always afford a house, and how does somebody end up homeless? I mean, there's probably a variety of, there's a million ways people end up homeless, but the phrase affordable housing in King County, and what's out there, and why isn't enough out there in affordable housing? What does that mean?
Well, I'm not a business person or an economist, but previous to our current economic downturn, a lot of the housing that was available in Seattle was being turned into condos, of course, and so rental housing became less prevalent and more in demand, and rental prices were increasing. And so it was increasingly difficult for people to find affordable housing anyways. Even if you were a median income earner in the county, when I moved back to Seattle a few years ago, I had a difficult time finding housing in the city. It's very hard to find. So there's different, with that kind of in the back of our minds, I guess there's different kinds of affordable housing. There's subsidized housing, which is subsidized usually through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, federal money, usually maybe funneled through, say, Seattle Housing Authority or King County Housing Authority, or sometimes buildings have subsidies that they get straight from HUD.
Right, that a landlord will then get some money of the rent from a government agency to help defray the cost.
Right, and then the person who obtains the apartment would pay 1/3 of their income. Those are really hard to find. They're very difficult to get. There's usually a long waiting list. I've seen anywhere from maybe 18 months to 8 years.
Really?
Yeah. So it's very difficult to find those. So there's also low income tax credit buildings. And so my understanding is, and once again, I don't have a lot of financial background, but my understanding is a builder wants to obtain some help building or remodeling a building. And so they get money from the federal government, and they agree to keep their rents at a certain level for, I think it's 40 years. So there's different levels. There's 30% tax credit, 40% tax credit, and that means that you have to be, say, 30% of the area median income to obtain that unit, and they hold the rent at a certain level. Or if you're 40% of the area median income and you can show that, you can get a 40% unit. And they hold the rent at a certain level, and I don't know what formula they use to get at those.
I was going to say formula. It sounds kind of convoluted, and
well, actually, I want to just add something. I was at something last night on a panel with some other people who are dealing with the same issue, and it was interesting because there is no rent control in this state. It is considered unconstitutional to implement rent control. So what that means is there is no regulation in terms of what you can charge for rent. And so when you look at some of the things Derek's talking about and people having an ability to afford a housing situation, whether it's a home or renting an apartment, whatever it is they're going to be doing, I think the latest statistics I saw indicated that a mom with 2 young children would need to make over $17 an hour to be able to afford an apartment, the kind of licensed childcare, so that she could work. So I think when you start to put that context on it and the fact that there's not enough affordable low-income housing, that there isn't any regulation that says you have to keep rents at a certain affordability, I think and then what you need to have to make a livable wage in this community, which is somewhat shifting with the economy, but I still think it's pretty dramatic.
And Melissa is sort of the real life story here, right? And we're glad you've come here to share with us. And so Derek, and you've been a case manager at Family Services, and you, Melissa, use the services that way. So you work closely with a landlord to find a housing. I don't know if we should start way back. And you were homeless for I don't know what circumstance. I don't know if you want to share that or not, but for how long, and how did you stumble into Family Services and find that these guys can help me? And, I don't know, page 1, start if you want chapter 1, I don't care.
Luck. Yeah. My partner and I were struggling with drug addiction for years. And when I got pregnant, and we got clean, and we were in really, really unsafe, unstable housing, basically prisoners in our own home, in this just drug flop. And the day that that I gave birth, we were evicted from that place. And yeah, it was this really scary place to be. And another agency helped us out, but we were in emergency shelter with no prospects.
Real temporary.
And we were referred to Family Services. And, we had so much going against us. We had been out of work for years. We had no income. We had terrible rental history. We just had so many barriers, and our case manager worked with us for months, step by step by step, advocating for us, like you were saying, helping us identify our barriers to stability. And the primary barrier was our housing, and nobody wanted to rent to us low-income housing, let alone we couldn't afford, regular housing. And they advocated for us. They helped us. They helped market us. I mean, we had a terrible past, but we had been making the steps that we needed to make to build a stable foundation. But it wasn't just our word that we could, we couldn't just go to a landlord and say, look, we're doing really well. We needed Family Services.
We're changing our lives. So Derek, I don't know, a landlord sees the history of Melissa on paper, just filling out a form, application, they're going to be turned down, right? I mean, how does Family Services then get involved in you're working together then, right, with a case manager? And
it takes time to build relationships with landlords, and I think a lot of what landlords like to see is just to know that they have someone that they can go to if issues arise. A lot of landlords don't know how to, they're not mental health professionals. They wouldn't know how to really engage someone who had a serious mental health issue in the moment. Or if other issues arise, it's nice to be able to call someone and say, the Smith family or whoever is having an issue. Can you come over and see if they're okay? And I think that that makes a lot of difference.
So you stay engaged with the landlord well beyond just like you getting them into an apartment. Like some service might just say, okay, we found you an apartment, we found you transitional housing, there you go. You guys work with the landlord continuously then.
I can certainly give you examples too. For example, we have a landlord that we work with in South King County. Wonderful family, private landlord, and I just keep an open dialogue with them. just asking them what do they need, what would they feel comfortable with. For example, they went out of town for Thanksgiving, and so I told them that I would just go by their building on, I can't remember what day it was, take a look around, knock on doors, make sure everybody's okay. And actually at that time I saw that there was a cracked window on one of the floors, and I got on my cell phone and I let them know that, it looks like you've got a cracked window. You might want to get a maintenance guy over here. And so they did. And I think it just is that extra level of feeling secure that someone's looking in and someone is, you've got an extra set of eyes and ears, and we do unit inspections to make sure is the carpet okay. Carpet's a huge issue for landlords. It costs them a ton of money to replace a carpet. I don't even think people have an idea of how expensive that is. I think one of our landlords said before for a average size 2-bedroom, it's something like $2,500. And if you're turning a unit once a year, that's $2,500 a year. And I think these types of things get really expensive, especially for small private providers. And so I think just adding that extra level of, we inspect units, we're there to make sure that people are doing what they need to do to keep their apartment.
Can I just add something? I think that they're both saying what Derek and Melissa are saying, what's important, which is it's about creating relationships.
Yeah.
So you're creating relationships with the people who have the housing. There's an understanding that you need the combination of housing and supportive services. So we're making a commitment to the landlord that we're going to be with this family. And Melissa also used, I think, a key word. We see ourselves as an advocate. A lot of the families that we work with are exactly how Melissa described the experience that her family had been through. Harder to serve, complex, multiple barriers, so that in the normal rental market, they're not going to be attractive. So our job is to help work with those families who are making a commitment, like Melissa's family, and saying we want to have a different path for our life, particularly for our child, and we're willing to do the work that takes. So you've got everybody coming together in a commitment in terms of a relationship where part of the agreement when they move into that apartment is that they'll be working with us. That's part of the lease structure. So there's some kind of a commitment on everyone's part to really do the work that's needed. The accountability is taken, but we stay with that family because most of the time they've either given up hope, people have given up on them. And so our goal is, holding people accountable is to really have people understand we're in relationship with you and we're going to stick with you because there's going to be ups and downs. So our job is to help you think through, how did that decision work for you? What might you do differently next time? So it really is, like I said, long and deep, and it's about relationship and being an advocate for the family.
And I think it was so important for us because once we got in the housing, like I said, that housing was that basic, that foundation that was absolutely necessary. But then there was all the other wraparound services that we needed to continue to build that structure so that we could get to the place that we are in now, where we don't need services anymore. The assistance with food until we could get our stable jobs, the assistance with furniture, just simple basic things, with accessing counseling, things that are absolutely necessary for building a healthy family and keeping us out of poverty in the future.
So you had a case manager that really was, I'm going to say, sounds like a friend.
She's phenomenal.
Who was with you, deeply involved, to know your landlord, and had a relationship with. Was it a landlord or an apartment you first moved into? That said, talk to you and say, you'll do better if you this way and this way for this landlord, and talk to the landlord, said, you'll do great with this couple because we're here with them and we're helping them put their lives in order and be stable. We're doing this for them this way. Is that the way it worked?
And then as a result, it ended up turning out that we ended up staying with this landlord once we were no longer eligible for. Once we'd moved past needing services and moving into one of their market rate units. So we've become, we were
really good tenant.
Yes, a really good tenant.
So the landlord is happy to have a family services client.
Yeah, and what I want to add is our model is called a housing first model, which you want to actually take a family like Melissa's and move them into stable housing as quickly as possible so they can become a part of the community. and you help them look at putting down roots there. If the kids are older, where they're going to be going to school, because with most families who've been homeless, that disruption is so chaotic for them. So helping them know you're going to be here, you're not going to be moved 6 times.
Yeah.
And then the goal is to do exactly what Melissa just said, which is called transitioning in place. So when they graduate and feel like they are now totally self-sufficient, they then transition in place, and so then they got a unit with the same landlord who now knows he's got a great tenant, and so it's sort of like everybody wins.
We are talking today with folks from Family Services of King County, Ruthann Howell, Derek Taylor, and Melissa Ellis. Gosh, I don't know where to go now. Let's talk about Family Services again. On the web, people want to learn more about this. You have a great website, familyservices.org, but there's a dash, a hyphen.
Yes, there is a hyphen and an S on the end of services, or you'll get thrown off.
Family-services.org, and people can write that down right now. I'll say it again. On radio, people are just getting their pencils now, so I'll give them a moment. Okay.
Do the www. That
they
gives them
know
a minute.
that part.
I'm just giving them time.
Family Services, family dash or hyphen. What do you say? Hyphen?
I say hyphen because
okay.
if you do dash, people sometimes do the slash.
Oh,
so
I see.
Don't do that.
Family-services.org, and the phone number, I think I have it right, 206-826-3050. Is that right?
That's the main line.
That's the main. People can ask a lot
And
of
one
questions
of the things
there
you're
and get
gonna,
referred to.
and one of the things you're gonna see on our website is right now we're talking about the issue of homelessness, and we're in the midst of a capital campaign, and we've made a commitment to the community that we're going to end homelessness permanently for 5,000 families over the next 10 years, and that's a combination of preventing families from losing their housing in the first place. And if you'll permit me, Melissa, think what would have been different for Melissa's family if they hadn't lost their housing in the first place, but somebody had been able to intervene and work with them to take the steps that they eventually took, but not to be disrupted with a newborn child, put into a shelter, had multiple moves. So one of the goals we also do right now is working with families who are on that margin, who are at risk of losing the housing. How can we help you keep it? And then we also work with families who were experiencing homelessness, like Melissa's family, and looking at how can we get you as quickly as possible into long-term housing. But the goal is, Melissa's just a great reflection of permanently moving people out of the cycle of poverty, homelessness, whatever other experiences they're having that are getting in their way.
That's a lofty and worthy goal.
No, it's not. We're going to do it.
Doesn't mean it can't be done. A big goal. How do we get the county and people, the citizens here, to say, yeah, that is the way we should do things?
Well, we're very fortunate in this community that this is one of the, you might remember, it was 200, it might even be more now, like 400 communities around the country who've adopted a 10-year plan to end homelessness. And our piece of that pie is really ending it for families because of our real commitment to children and changing the next generation. So you have every sector in this community coming together, the public sector, the faith-based community, the nonprofits, the business community, particularly working with us because Rotary 4, which is the largest Rotary in the world, selected us as their centennial project. So they're partnering with us to end homelessness permanently for those 5,000 families. So you've got every sector coming together saying, we can end homelessness in this community. And I guess what's important about that to me, like any big lofty goal that you tackle, as you said, it isn't just the resources and the people, it's the will. You can change things when there's a convergence of will and everyone says, we can do this and we will. So I'm actually very hopeful. This is different. That's a sea change.
And, well, let's talk about you. You're in a capital campaign. How do you raise money? You mentioned a grant, or was it Rotary? Rotary 4, which is the largest Rotary in the world, celebrates their centennial in June 2009, and they wanted to do something that honored the legacy of a lot of great Rotarians in this community who've done a lot for the community. Yeah, and so that's why it's also, our center is going to be called the Rotary Support Center for Families, because they wanted to sort of recognize what Rotary's done around the world. But they were looking for a project, and we were extremely fortunate because we have such great colleague agencies that they selected us. So they did raise over $4 million towards our capital campaign, and hopefully will be engaged with us for a long time. And I guess the thing that I would say, there's it's a very complex thing to do a capital campaign, so it's not a simple answer, but the bottom line to me is that you are inviting people. It's not asking for money, and it's not fundraising. You're inviting people to invest in helping us change this community in profound ways, and partnering with me to change the path for the lives of thousands of kids into the future. So if I'm a citizen down the block, I want my community to be better. Why wouldn't I want to be partnering with that?
Well, and if you just think about if just my one family, just my little family, if we hadn't gotten the support that we did through family services, I can't imagine where I would be. We certainly wouldn't have jobs. We wouldn't be contributing to our community. My dear child wouldn't be healthy and thriving. It's such a drain, both for the family, for the community, for everyone. It's a lose-lose. But when you invest in a family, it's win-win for everybody.
And so we're talking with family services. Ruthann, the other things at this new facility, you're going to like put everything that you do into one umbrella sort of building? I mean, you want to talk about some of the other things you have? Morning Song Early Learning Center.
So I'm trying not to fall over your thing over here. Do you know what it's going to do is co-locate all the services that we think are necessary to do what Melissa was talking about, and Derek has referred to the comprehensive wraparound services that we think are really required to help families move permanently out of those cycles that we've been talking about: poverty, homelessness, domestic violence, chemical dependency issues, mental health issues. All of those are present for many of our families, and we're also expanding some current services and adding some new ones that we thought were missing. So a major component of that, besides everything we already do, is really increasing our work with young children, 0 to 5, which is our Morning Song program you were talking about. We're expanding that, but we're also starting to work with parents. We already are doing like new parent services, a lot of early work with families who are at risk or on the margin with very young children, and looking very early at attachment and bonding and all the research that's out there right now that talks about what's going on with brain development. Mm-hmm. And you can make a profound difference working with families at a very early point with young children if you can start doing the work with them now from a therapeutic perspective to change their interaction with that child.
Well, give me a specific instance on how...
Well, one of the things that we're doing with in one of our programs, we've been selected to be a cornerstone program, which is Dr. Gail Kleiman out of California, and he's internationally known, and he's coming in and doing training with our staff, and he's got research statistics, and it's really working with young children who've been through crisis or trauma, mm-hmm. which are most of our children in our Morning Song program, and they can prove that with the cornerstone method, they do IQ testing, and they can show that in brain development, with the kind of work that we're doing with the kids, you increase the IQ by 20 to 30 points. So there's true ability to show helping kids get socially and emotionally ready to learn. And that's really our focus. You can be in the best academic setting, but if you aren't prepared socially and emotionally to learn, you're not going to do well.
Right.
So most of our kids who've been through different types of trauma or distress need that kind of additional work. So that's just one statistic that he shares that is sort of eye-opening when you listen to that, and that's with kids at 2 and 3 and 4.
Wow. Melissa, I'll ask you a few more questions if you don't mind, because
Sure.
It's such a fascinating story. We're talking about change and long-term change, and as you were pregnant with your child and realized we can't live this way, what the change you were looking for, was there a point that you came to realize, I need this support, I can't do it on myself? I mean, it must have been more than one time in your life that you said, we got to change, but you tried over and over, couldn't do it. What's the point for people to realize we need help and we have to go find it? I mean, is that able to be articulated, I guess? I don't know.
I'm not sure I can articulate that. I think it was really literally a process, and then one day, the day that we decided to clean up our lives and make the choice to get clean, I think that was the initial choice. And once we made that choice, everything else necessarily followed. Like nothing could stay the same. And in order for it to change, we needed help. I mean, it was just an assumption. There was no way we could do it on our own. We didn't have the skills, we didn't have the tools, we didn't have the resources. So we needed, well, I wouldn't say we didn't have the skills or the tools. We didn't have the resources, and it had been so long since we had used those skills or coped in a positive and healthy manner. Mm-hmm. And so working with an agency people within an agency who helped us re-identify what was important for us, and refocus our energy in a way that was that promoted our stability and our success in recovery and success in housing, and success in all of that was essential.
So
for
you
us.
found that Family Services was able to sort of guide you down, or maybe narrow your path and say, here's, you want to change, here's how you can do it, something like that?
They were one of the pieces, absolutely. Like I said before, without the housing piece, none of the other pieces would have followed.
Yeah.
It just couldn't have happened. The stress of being homeless is impossible to describe to somebody who hasn't been homeless, and it's impossible to really know how much stress it really caused until you're not homeless anymore. Like walking into my first stable, safe apartment through Family Services, and just the relief, the unbelievable relief, that alone was worth it.
Well, thanks for sharing. We're going to run out of time this morning, so I hope we haven't left anything out. If there's something you want
Two
to
things,
double
quick.
us up on.
If
Yeah.
anybody wants to work with us and has a unit and
Oh, yes,
wants to talk to
looking
Derek,
for a landlord. Right?
yeah, looking for, that's going to be one of our major barriers, is enough housing units
You
that
wanna
we can
continue
house families
growing?
like Melissa's who want to make a difference in their lives and are going to become great people you want to know. Secondly, I did sort of disingenuously talk about investing in our campaign, which I really do mean, but you can go to our website and there's ways to donate online, or actually, frankly, talk to us about what would have meaning for you and how you might want to be engaged in the work with us.
That family-services.org on the web, right? Family-services.org. Gosh, I can't thank you enough for coming in today. We've been talking with Ruthann Howell, Derek Taylor, and Melissa Ellis. Ruthann, the CEO and president at Family Services. Derek Taylor, a housing specialist for Family Services. And Melissa Ellis, a nurse with a healthy baby boy. Is it a boy? Yeah, that's what I thought. And 2 years old and stable now, and everybody's happy about that, having gone through Family Services, what they can do. Thank you so much for coming in today, and really thanks so much for what Family Services is doing in the midst of our community.
Thanks for your
Thank
support.
you.
Thank you.
I am Gary Shipe. Thanks for listening in today. We hope you've learned something new. Join us again next week as we continue to talk with people that are making a difference in our community.